Hello, my name is teacher Miguel Ángel Chavala. I study the master's degree in teaching English, and let me show you some information. Today's topic is about input, interaction, and context. This is our topic for today, and let me explain you the basic characteristics about these concepts. Number one, we must know about input and learning, and we must know what input is about. And we have different characteristics. Input is what a student receives when learning a new language. And we have some concepts. Number one, and it has characteristics. So it has to be sufficient in terms of quantity because the more a learner is exposed to the language, the more the student learns. Okay? What does it mean? So a student must know about the new language. He has to be involved in that context. If they listen to the new language, if they read in the new language, they will learn more about that language. That is input. Another characteristic is that limit exposure to language too can lead to interference and fossilization. So that's why a student must know and must be in a context where the language is spoken. Another characteristic, so it has to be comprehensible by understanding messages. So it does not have to be difficult. Students must understand that input. And finally, the frequency of times an individual hears a specific language form, it increases the possibilities to progress. So if we want our student to progress in the learning of the new language, so they have to be in that context. They have to be involved in the target language. That is input. So let's continue with the following topic. We have input, and another concept is intake. So what is intake? And the input can be transformed into intake by this way. So number one, it should be specifically addressed to the individual, okay? When they know how to use that language, when they know how to put what they learned into context. Another characteristic is the advisability of simplifying inputs, okay? When they can transform what they already know. And finally, the use of concrete reference, okay? When producing and when speaking a new language, students must know what they want to say. They have to use the correct words and the correct reference, and that is intake. And a positive atmosphere should be created. That is intake. So another important aspect in language teaching is interaction. And what is interaction and why is it really important? Learning a new language includes far more than merely receiving input. We also produce, so input is really important, but language must be communicative. So students must interact with other people. They have to use that language to give a message, to communicate with other people. And that is why interaction is really important when learning a new language. And the learners must know how to communicate and how to give clear and comprehensible messages to other people. Another aspect is output. So what is output in learning a new language? So according to some authors, it is an initial silent phase or period when the individual starts his or her progress and seems to favor the place and quality of acquisition. Okay, so number one, output promotes noticing. Okay, and what is noticing? When the student when the student realizes about the language. Okay, what they are using and how they are using it. Another aspect is hypothesis testing. Okay, and finally, they reflect upon their own language use. Okay, and that is the final phase when the student is able to produce language and they don't have to think about their mother tongue. In the first step, they may think in their mother tongue, and at the beginning, students translate what they want to say. But at this but at this point, at the last point, students are able to think in the new language, in the target language, and produce their message. Okay. So another phase is negotiation, okay? And it is related to the production of messages in a second language and the process of acquisition, the situation in which the learner has to make his or her output comprehensible, and this is a special and this is of a special interest. Okay, in this case, in this phase, we have interaction, and interaction is really important. Why? Because interaction allows learner to practice. Okay, when they interact with other people, they practice and they produce what they already learned. Another point is that opportunities increase. Why? Because they can learn more about the language, and if they speak with people who have a higher level of language, that will help the learner to improve their level of language as well. Interaction generates input, as I have mentioned before. Some people have a higher level of English. When we listen to that person or when we listen to that native speaker, we can learn more about the language. Another important aspect is interaction enables the learner to obtain negative inputs. Okay? And finally, it enables the acquisition of certain features. Okay, that is negotiation. Um, and then we have context. And in context, we have two different kinds of context. First of all, we have the formal context. What is formal context and what are its characteristics? Well, first of all, we must know the concept of context, and it is the exposure input takes place. Okay, this is where the learning, when the process takes place, okay? And let's focus on the formal context. Number one, we have research in the classroom, okay? Learning can take place in a classroom, and in a classroom, the language is taught in a very, very formal way because students are taught grammar rules, formal language, and they use language formally. Okay, they don't learn slangs or some stuff like that. No, they learn formal language, and this takes place in the classroom. We have another aspect, the teacher talk. And the teacher talk is really important because the teacher is the guide. Okay, the teacher is the main input in this formal context. And teacher must use that language, that formal language, so that students can learn. Okay. And we have discourse and analysis, and we have the task. And the task is the kind of activities the students do in the classrooms. Okay, and we have different kinds of tasks. We have debates, we have filling the gaps, we have a role play, and those activities help students to learn the new language. And finally, we have the other kind of context. We have the natural context. Um, the formal context is taking place in a formal situation. It could be in a classroom, but the natural context can take place in a country where the target language is spoken. And we have the foreigner talk, okay? In those situations, there are not teachers, okay? People learn the language because they listen to it and they are exposed to the target language. And the foreigner talk is really important because that's a main input in learning the new language. And we have features of foreigner talk, okay? Number one, we have regression. Regression is when the native speaker speaks or explains what they want to say. Why? Because the learner uh, does not have a good level or a high level of English. Okay? We have adaptation. What is adaptation? Adaptation is when the native speaker realizes the structure or the level of language of the learner, and they use the same structure and the same level the learner is speaking. Okay? And finally, we have a negotiation. What is a negotiation? Negotiation is when the native speaker tries to clarify the message. For example, if he uses a phrase that the learner does not understand, what the native speaker does is to explain that word or to explain that message. So this is basically what I want to share with you. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, you can write in the comments and I will gladly help you. Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you very much. And there are some errors in my presentation. They are finger mistakes, Professor, and I hope you can understand that situation, Professor. I'm so sorry for the mistakes, and that's all. Okay, thank you very much, Professor.